Okay, we're live.
All right.
Sifu.
How are you doing, Ray?
It's absolutely fantastic to see you. You know how special this is to me. Like it's just amazing.
Thank you.
And so
And this is my first Zoom interview ever.
I know, and I'm just beyond, yeah. So I can hear you clearly. I think there's a volume on here somewhere, but that's okay. I can hear you perfectly. So it's going to be great, and this is really just kind of the first time. So anyone that's going to end up watching this is our first attempt, and so bear with me. So I'll just do a real quick introduction.
Okay.
Hey everybody, it's Ray. He's the gray-haired guy in a gi, and this is my I have a series called Tales from the Mats, where I interview local in my community, local BJJ people, martial arts people. And this is my first time ever doing an interview with such a world-renowned instructor, someone from the Maritimes. And I know we could probably talk for hours, but I'm going to try to keep it at least maybe an hour long, if that's okay, if you have time.
Yes,
So
sir.
without further ado, here we go. Sifu John Maidment, I just thank you so much for all your time, and I truly appreciate you being here.
You're welcome.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
65 years old and still kicking.
It's we didn't we met, but we don't really know each other. But we officially met in 1993 in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And my instructor, Guru Rob Doley, who's from Fredericton, he hosted Guru Dan Inosanto, of course, and you were there. And you've probably seen online, I have that little short video of Guru Dan using you demonstrating, and then he points to me, and I'm like, oh my God, and he calls me up, and thankfully, my instructor, Guru Rob, he gave me the little tiny clip of that. So it's something I cherish. I cherish for being at the seminar, for meeting you, and also, of course, training with Guru Dan. So
yeah, it's always amazing to train with him.
Yeah. So, I just have some real basic, well, I have a lot of questions, but we'll keep this very fun. I don't get into politics and all that crazy stuff, and you're welcome to say whatever you like, but all the questions I'm asking are just questions that I have just about martial arts and you and everything. So I don't know if you have a glass of water or coffee with you or whatever, but
nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, all right, cool. So am I correct that you were born in Nova Scotia?
Yes, sir. Lived in Upper Tantallon until I was 8 years old.
Oh, wow. That's about 10 minutes from my house right now.
Okay, cool.
And so you were born, and okay, so and when did you decide to move to Newfoundland? I guess
well, my dad, yeah, my dad was from Newfoundland, and he had recently got out of the Navy and decided to move back to his hometown, St. John's.
Okay.
But we wound up living in a suburb called Mount Pearl, just outside of St. John's.
Oh, right. I have to keep I'm 56 years old, so I got to keep these things on. Sorry.
No problem.
So you were born here in Nova Scotia. You ended up moving to Newfoundland, and so how did you how did you get involved with martial arts? Is it something you always were interested in when you were young, or got involved with
nope. I had no idea what martial arts were, but I was getting bullied in school. Nothing serious like you hear about today with, stabbings and shootings and stuff, but just a general verbal abuse periodically and whatever. And then I saw an ad in one of the local periodicals about a judo class at the local YMCA. So signed up for that, took that for a little bit. And then during the summer of that year, which would have been probably 1974, 73, they had an Aikido program running, and the same instructor was teaching both. So I signed up for the Aikido program for the summer, And then I also, at the same time, started doing karate, Shotokan karate in
Oh,
town.
very
So for
fascinating.
2 months, I was doing 3 different martial arts.
Wow.
And then towards the end of the summer, I decided out of the 3, I liked the karate the best. And I continued with that until I got my purple belt, roughly, I guess, 2 years maybe later.
Roughly how old were you at the time when you were starting? You remember?
Born in 59, so I want to say 16, 17, somewhere around there.
Great age.
Or maybe a little older. Oh, I must have been a
Okay.
little older. I was in university when I left the karate school.
Right.
So first, I was in my first year and only year of university. So when I got out of the karate program, I was just training on my own with maybe one other person, but mainly on my own.
Right.
And that was very sporadic. And if you want me to keep going,
Oh, I have a whole list. We'll kind of go chronologically if that's a big
yep.
word for me. But at that
So,
time, was there
yep.
a lot of martial arts in your area? I mean, that's pretty, it's in the 70s.
The only permanent school was the karate school that I belonged to. They had other karate schools, they had Kempo schools and stuff that was renting different facilities. But of course, the Bruce Lee movies had come out.
Yeah.
Now they hit St. John's much later than they hit the rest of North America.
Okay.
So my first Kung Fu movie was called Five Fingers of Death. And I saw that in the little theater that we had in town. One of the theaters, I think we had 2 at the time.
Right.
And then Bruce Lee movies came out. And I did see them in sequential order, starting with Chinese Connection, I believe, and then Fist of Fury, then Return of the Dragon and Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
Game of Death had not been released, of course. That got released many years later.
Right.
But then, of course, I got, like everybody at that time period, I got enthralled with Bruce Lee.
Okay. Did
And
you
of
collect
course,
magazines at that time, or did they have magazines
of course,
in your area? Good. Oh, I love it.
I was probably had one of the largest collections by the time I left Newfoundland. I would say one of the largest collections in Canada, if not North America.
Wow.
At that time.
Yep.
Because I was ordering everything mail order, right?
Oh, yes, of course.
Nothing really available locally except for the magazine.
We were lucky here in Halifax. We had one store that I used to go to when I was young, because I've been, like you, collecting magazines since I was a youth. And anytime I would see an issue of Black Belt, or remember the Ninja magazines were out at one time, and I would just be like, oh, and I would get it and I would read it from cover to cover thousands of times and just try to absorb everything in it. And of course, I was training at the time in Japanese jiu-jitsu, but I didn't know anything. I mean, this was, the late 70s, early 80s, but it's so fascinating that where you're from Newfoundland, and that's quite far East Coast for anyone who's watching this, to suddenly move away, go to California, or was there something?
No, in between, I was living in Toronto.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry.
So in 1978, I had a good friend who later passed away in a helicopter accident. He was a pilot. I had read an ad in Inside Kung Fu for a seminar in Aspen, Colorado. And it was the Aspen Academy of Martial Arts. And they had 2 months of training with various martial art instructors. And Dan Inosanto was listed as one.
Right.
So by 1978, I was acquainted with Guru Inosanto from the magazines and knew that he was Bruce Lee's top student.
Yeah.
And I said to my friend Terry, I said, wow, I'd love to go to this. And to this day, I still remember Terry telling me, if you don't go now, you never will. So I talked to my parents, had the money, flew to Aspen, Colorado via Denver. And there's stories in the plane trip as well, but I'll leave those out for now.
Okay.
And spent 4 weeks in Aspen.
Wow.
Now, I didn't really know much about Filipino martial arts, and the first 2 weeks of the instruction was given by Professor Remy Prises in
Yes, I
modern
remember that article.
And he just had the group line up and he said, go pick up a pair of sticks. So I still remember my whole attitude at that time was like, oh, okay, whatever. And I go over and I pick up the 2 sticks, and I swear to you, this was my reaction, was like a kid on Christmas morning. And I went, oh, this is cool. And so I spent 2 weeks training every day under Remy Priestess, and then 2 weeks under Sifu Richard Bastilio in the more of the program that Guru Inosanto has brought through. So
Right.
for Richard Bastilio, we did the JKD as well as the Filipino martial arts.
Okay. Okay. And I know for a lot of people that may see this in the US or wherever, that's normal. But for us on the East Coast of Canada, that's unheard of. We only see the magazines.
Yes.
So it
Um, and even to this day, we get very few Canadians that come to train at the academy in Los Angeles. Very few.
okay.
So interesting point, during those 4 weeks, my roommate was we had 3 people staying in the same condo for the month. And one of my roommates was Cass Magda. Now, it was Cass's first time doing these arts as well. He was a Taekwondo brown belt who was going to be testing for his black belt either that year or the next year.
Right.
But Cass had booked for the 2 months, so he actually spent August with Sifu Inosanto as well.
Wow. Wow. I've never met him, but I obviously have seen him in the magazines and I've
Correct.
heard his name. And but wow, that's just so. How did you end up moving to California?
So professionally, I was a registered nurse, and I had obviously friends in Newfoundland, but some of them were wanting to go to Ontario for job opportunities.
Okay.
So 4 of us initially left Newfoundland to go to Toronto. We drove up in 2 different vehicles, got a condo or townhouse, I guess they call it, together. And we stayed there for quite a while together before we went our separate ways and moved out and whatever. So I worked as a nurse in Toronto for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Shortly after I had graduated from the school in Newfoundland for nursing, I had gone to California to write my state boards. And all through those years, the years in Newfoundland and the almost 10 years in Toronto, I kept my license active in California by doing the continuing education credits that they require.
Oh, interesting.
So when I finally decided to move to California because nursing had bottomed out in 1996, I had a license already, so it was easy for me to get a job down here.
Okay. And of course, they needed people as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
But not quite as badly as they had several years prior.
Oh.
I had attended nursing fairs while I was living in Toronto, and hospitals in America were giving away houses, or not houses, but condos,
Right.
giving away cars, asking nurses just to work 2 16-hour shifts a week and pay you for 40 hours.
Yeah.
And all those benefits and perks went by the wayside by 1997 when I moved to California. But still had a good 20 plus years of working here as a nurse and lots of experience in the ER.
Wow. You must have seen that was farther down in my questions, but since we're talking about it, I'll ask. In that time period, you must have seen some unbelievable things.
Well, my first gunshot wound was in St. John's, Newfoundland.
Oh.
The police had shot some suspect and they had brought him into our ER. It was a superficial wound, but it was I was assigned a nurse to that patient.
Okay.
But Los Angeles did provide lots of psychiatric patients, lots of stabbings, shootings, as did Toronto when I worked in Toronto.
Yeah.
The ER sees quite a bit of stuff that you don't normally see.
Yeah. I used to be an emergency response team member in a psychiatric facility. So it was like security, but we were what they call clinical emergency response team. So we would have to detain and hold when the police came and move people around that they're being held due to criminal activities and stuff. But just the wow, just can't believe what you would have went through. And now being on the East Coast, we always hear, and I don't want to talk too much about healthcare stuff because I know everybody wants to hear about martial arts, but we always hear about like a band-aid costs $500. Like everything's very expensive. Is that
In the
true?
United States,
Yeah.
well, when you don't have insurance
Oh,
and you have a job that's paying you reasonable amount of money,
yeah.
yes, it's expensive.
Oh, I see.
But if you have insurance, then the out-of-pocket costs tend not to be too expensive.
Okay.
And if you have no insurance, like if you're homeless or something, then you don't pay for anything and you get the healthcare for basically no cost.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah,
So now
we're
that's,
not familiar with that. How
it hasn't always been like that in America, but that's the way it's been for the 20 so years that I've been working here.
Oh, I see. Because I always heard like for someone to have a family to have a baby, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. But
It could be, especially if you don't have insurance and you have a job. Yes, it could
okay.
be tens of
Oh,
thousands for sure.
okay. All right. Enough of that because I know I really want to. So, what decided? So, you ended up going to the Inosanto Academy to start training.
In 1980 was my first trip, and then it was called the Kali Academy. It
Okay.
was located in Torrance, California.
Yeah.
So I had been in communication with Sifu Richard by letter. This was before the internet. And he knew I was coming down. I was for my trip, I was staying with my aunt and uncle in Brea, California, which was about, on a good day, 45 minutes away by freeway.
Wow.
My uncle drove me to the academy, and I walk in, and all I hear is the drumming. Bum, 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 bum. And I see the people training with Guru Inosanto hitting the drums. And I'm like, this is so cool. Because in Aspen, we didn't have the drums.
Okay.
It was because Sifu Richard was, I don't know if Sifu Inosanto had brought drums for the August portion, but Sifu Richard didn't for the portion that I took. So then Richard sees me and he calls me over, introduces me to Guru Inosanto. Guru invites me to take the classes. So I took the 2 classes or more that night, but then after class, he has everybody that wants to stay come in his office so he can talk. We were there till midnight or close to midnight, talking about Bruce Lee mainly, just listening to Guru more so than exchange back and forth.
Yep.
And then Guru says, where are you staying? And I go, well, I don't really know. I was planning on calling my uncle, but it's a bit late, so probably just a hotel. And then he invites me to stay at his apartment.
Oh.
Drove me to the apartment, picked me up in the morning, took me to breakfast. And this went on for, I think, three nights or 3 days anyway.
Wow.
And this is somebody that he had never met. He's going just on Sifu Richard's okay, and Sifu Richard had only met me for 2 weeks.
Wow.
But now this is 1980. It's not the 2020s where people are trying to get things from Guru
Right, of course,
Inosanto.
yes.
You know,
Much different times.
much different time. So from then on, I went either to California once a year or twice a year, or brought people up to Newfoundland. So we had Remy Priestess come up in 1979 before I had met Guru.
Yeah.
And then we had Guru come up in the late 1980s before I moved to Toronto. And then once I moved into Toronto area with a bigger population to support it, we brought Guru Inosanto and Simo Inosanto up there several times.
Okay.
As well as Sifu Larry Hartzell, Cass Magda, Salim Asli, when this was before, of course, I moved to California in 1997. So roughly 10 years in Toronto.
Okay. Oh, I understand. So Guru Dan's he's been in the Maritimes a number of times then.
Correct.
Like I know he's been in New Brunswick, I believe, twice. And I didn't realize he was in Newfoundland as well. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So of course Dennis White is up that way, you know Dennis.
Yes.
So wow, that's just incredible. And then so when you officially moved to California and you got yourself like an apartment and you just started working and just started training, or?
Well, the first year or so I was training as well as working.
Oh, I see.
And then gradually over time drifted away from the training. And I would guess it was 20 years absence from any serious training.
Okay.
Got involved in other interests,
Yep.
plus the commute back and forth to work was an hour or longer one way. And the shifts were 12 and a half hours long. So I
Yeah.
use that as an excuse, but since 2021, July 2021, I've been back at it solid, sometimes 7 days a week.
Wow, that's amazing. So you've obviously, even though you had a little bit of a break, um, he's changed schools a number of times, like locations, I guess. I always hear different things about the
The-
locations and
Correct. The current location's been theirs for about 20 years, though.
yeah,
So,
I've been to that one. So I
okay.
had been to that one for I traveled. I can't remember off the top of my head the date. I know it was like at least 7 years ago. I traveled. I did what I call a midlife crisis training tour. I said to myself, if I'm not going to go now, I have to go. So I traveled to California. I got there on an Easter Monday. Everything was closed. I stayed in Santa Monica. I rented a bicycle and I drove that bicycle for 9 hours, all down Beverly Hills.
Wow.
I was so, my adrenaline was so high. I was driving, looking at everything. Everything was brand new. Of course, I've never been to California, and I felt it the next day. But I have some great memories training at the Inosanto Academy, and just it's just as you know, it's a magical place. There's no other way to describe it. And I'm sorry I'll talk about it only for a couple seconds because this is about you, not me. But I just remember one time I showed up very early for the class, and Guru Dan was there doing like a yoga. It was kind of like a yoga jujitsu thing. It was something that he learned, I think, from the Machados. It was a way of stretching.
Hmm.
About six people on the mats, and I was there very early. He's like, come on in, jump on the mats." I was just like, oh, I was practically crying. And then another morning, I showed up there really early, and I was the only person. And the lady whoever was working the desk said, "Oh, class is not for like an hour." And I'm like, "Can I clean the place then? Like, can I help? Can I do the mats and the toilets and dust?" And I spent the whole hour looking at every picture that he has and every diploma, every award in the academy. And I said, my whole trip was worth just seeing all of this. And then I got to Professor Salema's lead. He's been to Halifax here twice. Thankfully, I got to train with him as well. And so when I was in California, I trained with a bunch of other people too. I was training with, Eddie Bravo, and I did a ninja seminar with Stephen Hayes, 3 days with him, and Judo Gene LaBelle and Benny Urquidez and Boss Root. And it was magical. But
Yes.
spending the time training with Guru Dan was something I have a tattoo on my shoulder of like the academy, like the crest, just something I'll never forget. So I mean, your first time there, you must have just been in awe. Like,
The visit to the Kali Academy in Torrance, I mean, I still have the photographs that I took then. And of course, that was on an old film camera, not digital, of course. But those pictures just bring back tremendous memories. And the pictures from the Academy are also in his book, The Jeet Art and Philosophy of Bruce Lee.
okay.
And those pictures were taken at that academy.
Wow.
But
Historic.
it's literally the first school that he opened in 1974.
Wow.
So we're talking 50 years ago was the beginning of his commercial school. And like I said, the drum beating, they're wearing t-shirts and sweatpants and training in sneakers, which I knew about, but
Yep.
Your previous experience being in karate and judo and aikido, and then you go into the program that he has developed, and it's so different. There's similar things, obviously.
Yeah.
You can only punch or kick a certain way, but the whole atmosphere is different. The methodology is different.
At that time back then, were people like, hey, where's my uniform and where's my belt? And were they disappointed they didn't wear a uniform, or?
Well, I don't think the people that came to us would be disappointed, but misunderstood by other martial art groups and schools, certainly.
Interesting.
Guru brings it up in class that, we were the first group to actively use focus mitts.
Yes.
And they got made fun of because the other karate schools would call them baseball gloves with no pockets. And, but we were always striking things, but in an alive way, not like a makarara board or a heavy bag. I mean, we were moving constantly.
Yeah.
The holders would be pressing us and we'd be fighting back on the pads.
Not common back then.
Certainly not common in 1978, not even in 1988 for that matter.
Right.
So yeah, but now we're very similar to everybody else that's out there in some respects, and just still different in other respects.
Right. Of course. Of course. So I guess you've seen the development of Jungfang Kung Fu or JKD grow and change over the many, many years, especially with the internet and all that other crazy stuff. What are maybe off the top of your head, if you can think of some positive things that have come from the changes?
That's easy. The positive changes are improvement in the skills, because we're still looking at other arts and taking what's good from them and putting it into the program. Different training methodologies, like in the old days, some of the exercises that we use for warm-ups have now been put aside because they're dangerous to our spine, or there's other exercises that are more effective at developing the muscles.
Right.
So as exercise physiology changes, we adapt from the new research, as opposed to staying in the way, well, this is the way it was done in 1950, so we're going to keep doing it like that.
Yeah. I noticed there's a lot in some martial arts. Obviously, we all know martial arts. Some stick to their original style, like this is how the great grandmasters did it, so we must do it this way. And then there's also people, even in, say, karate, taekwondo, they try to branch away. They still keep their roots of their art, but they try to be more adaptive. What works in today's society? Right. Functional karate or functional taekwondo. So, which is obviously a great thing. But I know from studying and reading back then when you guys were training, nobody did that.
Nope.
Right? They just stuck.
Or if they did, they were another splinter group that nobody heard of, kind of deal.
Yeah.
But none of the big organizations did it for sure.
Right. Right. And of course, California being, obviously, like New York and all that stuff had their own history with martial arts, and all the states and different parts of the states do. But would you say it's correct if I said California was kind of a melting pot of martial arts? Like,
by the time that I came on the scene, and maybe 10 to 15 years prior, yes, but before that it was Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Sifu Inosanto still talks about how Ed Parker, developed from Hawaii, and at Hawaii being a melting pot of a lot of Asian groups that first came westward, eastward, I guess, eastward for them. Interacted and stole and borrowed from each other and formed their own systems or their own unique aspect to that system.
Right.
So from Hawaii, it then came to California, more so than developing alone in California.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, that's very fascinating. And just so everyone knows, I'm actually my wife is a reflexologist. She also teaches Reiki and sound healing. So I'm actually in her treatment room. That's why I don't have pictures of Bruce Lee and Dan Inosanto on my wall. That's actually my wife's treatment room I'm in. So it's very professional.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah. So, of course, Guru Dan has so many arts, even back then at his academy. Obviously, JKD and Muay Thai and Sabat, and then he introduced more shoot wrestling and quite a while ago, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and so many martial arts. Was there one particular that you really more preferred or gravitated to, or you want to do everything?
Well, in 1978, sorry, in 1980, when I first went to the Kali Academy, the only things that we did were the Filipino martial arts, but different styles of Filipino martial
Yeah.
arts. And then we did the JKD, which had elements of the Savate, for especially on the front leg, elements of the Muay Thai, especially with the rear leg kick, elements of grappling, elements of Western boxing,
Right.
elements of the Wing Chun, but also elements of praying mantis and other styles that Bruce Lee had taken things from,
Right.
including the headbutt from Burmese Bondo and other things that are in JKD, Jun Fan Kung Fu, but are not directly developed from the Wing Chun.
Correct.
So by doing the Jun Fan and the FMA in 1980, on a very close visit, either 81 or 82, he began to put in the Muay Thai in the classes that I was going to.
Right.
Now, remember, the first time I was there, I was only there for maybe 3-4 days. You don't get to see all of Guru Inosanto's material in 3 or 4 days, as you know.
Yeah.
So he could have been doing Muay Thai in 1980 and probably was, but I didn't experience it like I did on a subsequent visit.
Right.
And as soon as those Thai pads came out and we were double kicking almost every time, it was really, really improvement to my cardio and everybody else's cardio.
Yeah.
We were hitting those with elbows and knees and round kicks and foot jabs, parrying the pad when the holder would throw it at us. So it was a way more dynamic kickboxing experience without it being a sparring experience.
Okay.
So, and then the Silat was brought in. Shoot wrestling was much later in development.
Right.
A separate Savate class was later in the progression of the school. But during my early days, it was pretty much simply the FMA and the Jun Fan. But when I say simply, that overrides the fact that there was multiple components.
If I was just to ask a general question, I mean, Guru Inosanto was trained or studied so many Filipino martial arts styles, like a rough number off the top of your head, like 20, 30, like.
At the school, he lists 32, but he's done more than that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And like when he started incorporating like the Muay Thai and Savate and stuff, and that's maybe perhaps due to because that's what he was interested in as well, like his studies.
Well, yes, and also he wanted to expose those arts to the general public. Same as when he helped the Machado brothers break out, and he'd recommend them for seminars at different locations. And so instructors that are certified under Guru Inosanto have brought many of those people to different parts of America, different parts of Canada, different parts of the world to help spread. So the Savate grew through Guru Inosanto, the Silat grew through their exposure to Guru Inosanto. All those different arts got spread throughout the world, mainly or faster, I guess, than if they weren't associated with Guru Inosanto.
Oh, I see.
So like Paul Herman Sawanda, when he first came over, then the Twar brothers, they all gave seminars at our school, and Guru Inosanto would do privates with them or semi-privates with them, and then eventually became authorized to teach their systems, and he would still bring them in for seminars from time to time, encourage them to go to other places to teach. Same for the Muay Thai with Arjun Chai, Surasute, and Guru Inosanto is also trained in other Thai styles too, with other Thai instructors.
Yeah, that's where like with Rob Doley, my instructor, Guru Rob, we through him we can become certified or became certified in the Jun Fan Kung Fu Jeet Kune Do, but also I'm very interested in the Muay Thai as well. I never had a huge interest in Silat. I really appreciate the art, but also doing the Filipino martial arts, the Muay Thai, and the JKD are kind of my three that I really, really enjoy. And my academy that I used to run here in Halifax, we had Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Now I do that as well, but I do that to supplement my training. Like, plus, I know at the Inosanto Academy, they try to, they like to do a number of different things. So I'm trying to follow that pattern as well. I like Bruce Lee, like everyone. I think he's great, but I really worship, and I don't see. I hate to use that term worship. Um, I when I first met Guru Dan in 1993, it just changed my outlook on martial arts forever. And now I look up to him and I follow what he's doing. That's sort of like a mentor,
Right.
So it's just, and through learning and then meeting my instructor Rob Doley, is just, Rob's provided that opportunity for us here, even though he's about 4 hours away from us. Since I think the early 2000s, we've been going back and forth training, but and I've taken a number of seminars with Guru Dan, mostly in Montreal, and I did one down in the States and stuff. And as you know, seminars are so overwhelming.
Yes.
So much information that, and I think he just loves to give so much of his time to people. And so the particular arts that you enjoy.
I thought you were going to ask that question, and I was running through my head what I'd answer. And basically, I just enjoy the martial arts.
Perfect.
Um, I don't enjoy per se doing katas.
Yep.
Unless the person is able to intelligently explain what the movements are for.
Right.
And then I can understand that it's a great way to put the curriculum together in a pattern that same as if you do Muay Thai and you do an 18 count, you're not going to fight in the ring doing sequential movements in an 18 count format.
Yeah.
But it's a great way to put some combinations together to give you variables, and so that you're not stuck going, oh, what can we train today? You've got a ready set pattern to go, and you can still vary it from time to time. For example, if you don't want to do a round kick in the particular count, you could do a foot jab or a knee and mix it up like that.
Right, right.
You could do cross hook cross within the count, or you could do cross body hook cross within the count. So it gives you that flexibility. So I basically just like doing martial arts. I've done Savate with the French Federation. I've done privates with, when he was alive, with Pendekar Paul Dutours. I've done privates with all the Machado brothers when I was much younger.
Yeah.
So I like exploring other arts, but like you, I come back to the FMA, the Jun Fan, Muay Thai to some degree, but being a little older now, I don't do as much Muay Thai as I should. And I like the Silat quite a bit for the close quarter combat and the off balancing, the limb breaking, that kind of stuff.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's I often, and you would obviously meet other martial artists that only know about one style, and it's so fascinating. And maybe they don't watch movies and they don't read magazines, and they're just like, I do my judo, any particular art. I'm not just saying judo, but I do my judo 3 times a week, and that's it. Well, how many martial arts movies have you seen? Oh, I don't watch them. How many magazines do you read? I don't read any. You know anything about ninjas? No, I don't know anything about ninjas. It's like, man, we love martial arts, like all arts, and you kind of pick and choose what you like. Maybe just going a little bit of a different direction, and you can give me your explanation of this. Recently on the crazy internet, and Facebook is terrible. It's good, but it's also terrible because there's so many people out there that have no idea what they're talking about. And real quick, there's always a discussion about original JKD concepts. Like, here's what I was told. In order to understand the concept, you have to know the original. It's all the same. But maybe from your opinion, I could be wrong. So,
Well, when we talk about the original JKD, what original JKD are we talking about? 1963, 64, 65, 67, 68, blah, 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 right?
Right.
So, and then if somebody trained with Sijo Lee, for the most part, he used them to springboard ideas off of. So based on either their need, if they were a movie actor, he would teach them a certain way.
Right.
But if they had a real interest in martial arts and learning it, then he would bounce off whatever attributes they had. If they were great at boxing, like Steve McQueen was more of a fighter than James Colburn, according to the material that I read on our interviews with Sijo Lee. So he would train them differently, obviously.
Right.
He would train many people for just movies. You know, he had Guru Inosanto open up the first JKD school or group. It was a women's group in San Pedro. He taught at the YMCA, women's.
Oh, wow.
And according to the way that Sifu Inosanto explains it, is Sijo Bruce did not want men being taught at that time period because he was basically afraid they would just put it in their own system. So he authorized them to teach women's only group for a short period of time down in San Pedro. So again, the JKD evolves. The whole idea of the system was to research and evolve, to personalize it to whatever your needs were and your attributes. So therefore, in many cases, except for the core curriculum, like, you know, being able to throw a jab and a cross, that kind of stuff, the core curriculum exists, obviously. But even that, and I'm sure you're well aware that when Bruce first came to North America, he was mainly a Wing Chun guy.
Yes.
But even that was changed over time. And then eventually, as he got exposed to other arts, things got thrown in there. So there's drills that we do in the sensitivity training that doesn't even exist in Wing Chun. So my question is, then, if Bruce put things from other arts into his JKD, and he's no longer here to say what's he wants or wanted, why can't we as people express ourselves using whatever works for us? Right? Even when he was alive, the sparring changed over time, where they were fully suited up in armor to when they weren't wearing anything. Well, except uniform, of course, the t-shirt and the pants, but they weren't wearing any armor. So things change, things evolve.
Right.
If you want to be a reenactor and like do the Civil War reenactments, that's great. But that doesn't mean you're capable of fighting in 2024 war.
You said it right there. That's exactly, that's a really good explanation. Because I mean, again, there's some people that just feel everything from, say, 1973 and back is what only you should do.
Correct.
That's it. And I guess if you're doing that and you enjoy it, that's great.
Yeah.
But you know, there's so much more out there. And why not do it all?
Yes.
You know, find out what works for you. I know, you know, you can't, you don't want to talk too much personal stuff about Guru Dan, which is great, but what's kind of a typical day for him, or back a few years ago? I know he used to travel so much doing seminars like every weekend and stuff, but you know, I'm obviously, you know him so well. Like, what's his typical day?
Typical day is training for at least a couple of hours, if not longer, and then teaching classes anywhere from just maybe an hour and a half, which is like Friday, to a Thursday where he's teaching an hour and a half in the morning and then 5 hours at night.
Right.
So, and then typically he'll also train either personally or train with somebody else during the free time that he has.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, the normal errands sometimes, you know, going out for food or whatever, but for the most part, it's either physically training or researching, going through his notes, going through books, doing online training. He was doing online training for a long time.
Yeah. How did COVID down there affect the academy? And
They
you
were
got,
working outdoors. Once they were allowed to work outdoors, they were
okay.
training outdoors.
Yeah, I ran my club for about 24 years, 26 years, and then when COVID hit, I shut it down for a few months, but that's a whole nother topic. But as you know, I didn't have a big academy. I think the most students we had altogether was around about 170 students doing different martial arts and about 10 different instructors helping out. But as you know, politics, problems, instructors arguing with each other. Why does my Tai Chi class have 2 students and my BJJ class had 40 students? And it became so kind of stressful that there was probably about the last year and a half, like in all honesty, I didn't even want to go there
Mhm.
because it was just so much. And once COVID hit and we had to shut down, I kind of had a bit of a break. I have a shed in my backyard. It's converted into like a really small dojo, fits about 4 people. We trained there for a bit. And then I was like, this actually, even though I lost income, I'm like, this is so much better for my mental health. And a friend of mine, lucky for me, he built a gym 2 minutes and 30 seconds from my house. And he's like, come help me with the gym. And that's where I am now. I volunteer my time and, we kind of have a little deal worked out, but now I have no stress. Poor fella, he has the stress. He has a big
Yes.
facility and he has his house on the same property and he's got all, but now I can offer him sort of maybe offer advice and mistakes I've made or the things I've learned through teaching and things to look out for and people to look out for and all that other stuff. But it's just been now the joy has come back to learning again.
Good.
And so, and I would imagine, you're training all the time yourself.
6 to 7 days a week. Yes.
Wow. And you don't feel you get burnt out now anymore. You're just kind of go at your own flow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm teaching 3 classes a week at this academy,
Yeah.
substituting when needed. And then I have private students that I train on location or at the academy as well.
Right.
And then next month in October, I'm going to Toronto to teach a seminar.
Yes. Up with Sean.
Correct, Sean.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great fella.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's really cool.
That's awesome. And there'd be no question we'd love to have you here in Halifax sometime. But as you know, like our little group, JKD is not very popular. I have a core group that love it, but there's only a small group. But if I can figure out some way it'd be great for to have you here and even Rob Doley here at the same time. And but we will arrange it sometime, and that would just be amazing for you. Plus, to visit Nova Scotia again,
Yes.
Piggy's Cove, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And but obviously, your time is very valuable. So, but and now, are you still working? You're retired now.
I retired in April of 2021.
Okay.
I was only 62, but I had enough of it.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine a highly stressful job, what you would have had. So, and you're enjoying your retirement? You're just kind of training and
Totally enjoying it. Yep.
yeah.
Training, teaching, relaxing, getting caught up on things that I put aside for years.
Yeah, right. So we've been at this about 40 minutes and there's so many questions I could continue to ask, but I don't want to keep it too much longer. But I have some, I guess I call them fun questions for you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, fun ones. Now, I've only seen Mount Rushmore in magazines and on the news. Yeah, I know. Get ready. Give me your Mount Rushmore of martial arts people that you would put on a Mount Rushmore. It can be anybody. It could be like Chuck Norris or Jigoro Kano, or obviously, like people. I know we don't necessarily maybe hold people really in high regard, but people you look up to, or maybe you follow. It could be an author, or it could be anything.
Don Drager.
Pardon me?
Don Drager.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a shame more people don't know who he is, the younger generation.
Yes. Obviously, Guru Inosanto.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And then probably Helio Gracie.
Ah, good one. Yeah. Very innovative.
Yes.
I mean, changed the outlook of, a lot of martial arts. So,
Yes.
and it, I think sometimes I talk to people I train with in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the younger people, and they have no idea of any of this stuff we just talked about. But I often say the popularity of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, did it ruin Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I'm not sure, because it's the evolution. It's changed so much since it
Correct.
first came out. It was kind of its own little special thing. And then over time it's changed. And now people look at Gracie Jiu-Jitsu as, oh, that's old fashioned. And now we're training without uniforms, no gi. And here's a belt. You don't even need to wear a gi. And now you're a blue belt or a purple belt. And I don't know. I'm a traditional person at heart. So yeah.
But see, the original Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was not traditional in the sense of Japanese martial arts being traditional, right?
That's right. Yep.
So it's a tradition of a non-tradition art.
That's true. That's true. Most Japanese jiu-jitsu in Canada, and people are going to get upset for me saying this, is just kind of Western jiu-jitsu. There might be some real, very traditional jiu-jitsu schools, but it's very hard to trace your lineage all the way back. I mean, most judo people, like I can trace jiu-jitsu in Nova Scotia. I have to look on my email, but to 1921 or 1921. I can trace it to Bridgewater. I actually have a photocopy of a certificate of a police officer there that did jiu-jitsu training in Europe, and he was a police officer there. Anyway, and then in the 1950s, we had judo people come to Halifax obviously through the military and the Navy, and they were doing a lot of self-defense. And you must know, of course, the name John Blooming.
What's the last name?
John Blooming. John Blooming is from Amsterdam. He's a very famous, I think he's a 8th or 10th dan in judo, also a 10th dan in Kyokushin. I believe he passed away now, but at the time in Halifax, he was a sailor, and he was here, and he was teaching jiu-jitsu and judo. And anyway, I'm getting way off track with this, so I'm sorry about that. So you named your people. So here's the next fun question. I'm sorry, I just ramble on.
Okay.
Give me some of your favorite martial arts books. Or it doesn't even have to be martial arts.
Any of the ones by Guru Inosanto.
Of course. If you can't remember, that's okay.
Yeah, no, book-wise, I mean, I have several, but the only ones that I've got all the pages looked at multiple times are probably Guru's books.
Yeah.
So the Filipino martial arts, the JKD, the art and philosophy of John, Absorb What Is Useful, Training with Equipment, all those books.
Right. How about martial art movies? Yeah, obviously you've seen a lot.
I like Steven Seagal's movies when they first came out.
The first ones.
Yeah.
Original ones. Yeah.
Those were fun. And then, of course, the John Wick movies.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff in those, and a lot of our people are involved in the training for Mr. Reeves. Then Born Identity, the first couple.
Yep.
Jeff Amata was heavily involved in choreography. So those are probably my favorite.
Okay, all right. You never got into video
others.
games, right? Like martial art video games?
No.
Okay.
But some of our guys have been suited up with that stuff in the green screen,
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Wow, that's just amazing. So again, sorry, I apologize. I'm just looking at my notes here, just trying to keep track. And you travel, you're heading to Ontario to do a seminar.
Correct. And then Newfoundland in November.
Oh, you're heading back there, are you? Good
yes,
for
sir.
you. Yeah. Do you still have any family back there, or do you have relatives? Or
I have an aunt and uncle in St. John's, and then several friends and former students as well.
Right. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I mean, I don't want to get into politics. I'm not going to ask any more questions. There's so many politics and JKD and martial arts that I really want to ask you, but I won't do it here because I'm trying to keep this very clean. So you're not on Facebook very much, correct?
No.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing.
I usually just post my stuff, and I try not to comment on the other stuff.
Okay. So if you're not aware, I have a page. It's called the Guru Dan Inosanto Fan Club.
Yes.
Yeah, and thankfully, I had permission to have it from Sumupala and Cookie in Australia, and Guru Joel Clark. And he's kind of an administrator on there, and they kind of keep an eye on it. And I started that whenever Facebook started. Um, a lot of people find it boring because there's no politics. You have to post a picture of Guru Dan, maybe a nice story about him, and that's it. Maybe a YouTube video, and sometimes they take down videos because they're kind of copyrighted, and someone from the academy will say, "Hey," they call me up and, "Hey, Ray, can you remove that video?" And I'm absolutely, I do whatever they tell me, I do it. And so my goal is to hopefully post this on my YouTube channel, our interview, and then I'll post it on there. And again, we didn't talk about anything negative. We just had a great conversation about martial arts, and of course, about Guru Dan.
Yes.
um, anything you might want to add? Any type of philosophy you follow, or words of advice, or people looking to get into JKD, or I'm not sure if there's if there's anything you want to add.
If you don't mind me going into the area of self-defense.
Yes, let's do that.
So I told this to Guru Rob, I think at one of the seminars I gave for him at his school back in the day. And he still, I don't know when it was, but it was less than 10 years ago, told me that he still remembered what I said in this seminar. And it was because as males, we tend to be a little bit egotistical and a little bit more challenging to other males than we should be sometimes. I brought it up in the seminar that before you get involved in a fight, is it worth losing your life?
Mm,
Because the risk is there, no matter how good you are.
that's right.
And then if you happen to seriously injure the other person, these days that could land you in jail for a long time, or a lawsuit, or both. So before you get all, ruffle your feathers up high and start pushing out your chest, you may want to take a little breather and just weigh your options.
Right.
And if it's not worth fighting and risking your life or someone else's life, just talk your way out or just evade the situation entirely.
Right. Right. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, I find that real quick. I mean, most people don't you never know when you're going to get in a situation. We all know that. But most people don't get in situations. It doesn't happen a lot. Again, it can, depending on your type of job, if you're a police
Right.
officer, law enforcement, or health worker. Obviously, health workers have a high risk of being attacked in
Yes.
their job, all that stuff. But what I often find, people probably aren't going to like me for saying this, but there's a lot of reality-based self-defense instructors out there that I don't know how many actually been in real situations. Some have, but I think there's a lot that haven't. But they try to portray like you have to learn how to kill somebody and do this and do that, and they kind of go way to the extreme. And I'm trying to be very polite about this, but I think it's like the person that says I'm undefeated in 600 street fights. What's that tell me? You're not a very nice person if you're in 600 street fights. you know,
Yep.
I always say I'm undefeated in 400 fights because I go to the kindergarten class and I push all the kids over and I count them as fights. No. My only philosophy that I have, well, I have a lot too, but I often say this is for people who teach. Comes from an instructor standpoint. The most dedicated student you'll ever have is yourself. That's it. Because as you know, you would have experienced this. You spend so much time teaching somebody, and then next thing they go, I'm going to take lawn bowling. See you, John. I'm going now. After 10 years, I don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
Like, oh, all this knowledge that I've given you, and now you're just taking up lawn bowling. No, and listen, again, I just really appreciate your time so much. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for martial arts, for us as Atlantic Canadians, and obviously for representing Guru Dan, and just everything. It's just so amazing that you carry on the tradition. It's,
Thank you, Ray.
yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, or maybe I forgot anything you feel like you wanted to say.
Nope, just whoever's watching or listening, just keep training, just keep studying. Do it for your health, do it for whatever positive reasons you have to do it. Just keep doing it.
Okay. I'll be in touch, and I'll let you know when this thing gets eventually posted. And I hope to interview more people in the JKD community. I did an interview with Tim, teaches at the academy. I'm going to have him on here and try to do something with him, and just so many great people. But okay, listen, it's probably 7 o'clock your time now, I think.
Almost.
So what happens now? You just relax?
Nope, go online and start studying some more stuff. I'm also into photography, so
That's right.
Learning about that too.
Okay, good for you. Well, you enjoy your evening and all the great California weather.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch. Sifu, thank you for everything. I truly
All right, you're welcome.
You're wonderful. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.